The entire book is just him yearning for her. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith and thank you so much for watching. Today we're going over my September reading wrap up. For those of you who don't know, I have been on a journey to get my physical TBR down as low as possible. I don't have an exact number in mind that I want to get it down to. I would say 0, but there are a couple books that I'm saving for a specific reason. So really I just want to get it as low as I can. Last month I ended with 55 books and this month my goal was to get it below 50. And to hold myself to that, I went to my Instagram story and asked people to give me a punishment that I have to do if I don't get it below 50, and here are some of the punishments. Either sell or donate 5 books if you don't get it below 50. You have to get rid of 2 books at random, blind grab, no takebacks. If you don't get it below 50, you can't buy books until 2026. And then Bestie Ellie came through with the biggest threat I have ever received in my entire life. She says, "I'll put dead cicada shells in your bed if you don't." For those of you who don't know, I am terrified of bugs and insects and beetles. So this threat is very motivating to me. She has also put dead cicada shells on my belongings before, and let's just say I was not a fan. And for those of you who don't know, the cicada shells is pretty much the equivalent of a snake's shedded skin, so literally no harm would come to a bug. It's just the shell of the bug, but it still creeps me out so much. So if I ended the month of September with 50 or more books on my physical TBR, those are the punishments that I'll have to do. And there were more punishments, but those to me felt the most threatening, so those are the ones that I decided to include in this video. So like I said, my TBR at the start of the month was 55, and I did actually order a few books at the end of August, but they didn't arrive until September, so let's just say my physical TBR at the start of the month was 57. And to keep things interesting, I'm not going to tell you if I got it below 50 until the end of this video. So if you want to know if I'll have to do any of those punishments, stick around for that. And real quick, as always, this video will contain spoilers. I will put timestamps of when I talk about each book in the description. So let's jump into my first read of the month, which was The Hart Principle. I loved this book so much. I gave it a 4.75. However, I didn't realize that this was part of an interconnected standalone series. I have read The Kiss Quotient, which was the first book in the series, and then the second one is The Bride Test, which I haven't read, but I definitely will be reading because I gave The Kiss Quotient 5 stars and this one 4.75, so I'm assuming I will love The Bride Test as well. Lately, I feel like I've read a ton of books where the characters just fall flat. That was not the case at all in this book. There are so many layers to both Anna and Quan. That being said, I do wish we got to dig a little bit deeper into Quan's character. It definitely felt like it was way more focused on Anna, so it didn't quite get as much Quan as I would have liked. However, again, overall, I loved this book. My only other complaint is that I absolutely hate other man drama or other woman drama, and unfortunately other man drama is included in this book, and extra unfortunately it is one of the main plot points in the book, so it's sadly not something that you can really overlook. But even with that, I loved this book. I really liked the relationship between Anna and Quan, and also the writing was just really good. So The Hart Principle, 4.75. I definitely would recommend this book. And then we have Little Women. I can't believe I'm 22 years old. I have seen this movie multiple times. I have literally been in the play as Beth, and I just read this book for the first time. I think it goes without saying, this book was an easy 5 stars. I have never related to a character more than I relate to Beth. This is one of those books that I really feel like everyone should read, especially if you're a woman. Of course, it explores the family dynamics between the Marches, it explores friendship, it explores romance. It is just so beautiful. There were a couple times I needed to remind myself that this book was written like 150 years ago, because sometimes the way the men spoke to or about the woman just wasn't it. So if you read this book, or really when you read this book because you need to, just know that that is something that happens. Last week was episode 4 in my series where I compare books to their film or TV show adaptation, and I actually did Little Women for that. So you guys should go check that out, and because that is one of the longest videos I've posted and I'm literally talking about this book the entire time, I'm not really going to touch more on this book in this video. Just know I absolutely love it. It is an easy 5-star for me. I highly recommend it. And then I read another classic, which was Gulliver's Travels, and I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars, and honestly, part 1 and 2 were really captivating and engaging for me, but part 3 and 4 were just so boring. And I said this in my August wrap-up video, I really am just finding that I'm not a classic person. Little Women is like literally the one exception to that, and like a couple books that I read in high school like Lord of the Flies and Of Mice and Men, but I find that most of the classics I read are just super boring to me. So right now, if you're saying, Faith, then why do you keep reading them? That's because I already have them, and I've said if I have it on my bookshelf, I have to at least give it a chance. And I know I said that I liked part 1 and 2 and didn't like 3 and 4, so you're probably like, Faith, then why is it a 2-star? And that's for a couple reasons. reasons. The first reason being part 1 and 2 is significantly shorter than part 3 and 4. And also, I hated the writing style throughout the entire book. The entire thing is pretty much in the style of a diary or a journal, and I just did not like that at all. There's also essentially zero dialogue throughout the entire book, which I could not stand. So even though I liked part 1 and 2, overall, I really just didn't enjoy this book, so it is getting a 2-star, and honestly, I would not recommend it at all. If you like classics, maybe, but if you don't, definitely do not read this book. And then I read Dragon Teeth, and I gave it a 4.75, and I was actually really surprised with how much I liked this book. I definitely would not say that historical fiction is a genre that I seek out. I really only bought this because it's Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park, and there's a dinosaur on the cover, so I figured it's about dinosaurs or paleontology. And I'm very glad that that influenced me to pick this up because, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. This probably would have been a 5-star for me. However, the beginning does start fairly slow. There are small points at the beginning that keep you engaged. However, to get the overall start of the main plot, it did just take a while. But overall, it was very easy to stay engaged in the book. I also read it in literally less than a day. Would this book make me read more historical fiction? I honestly don't know because, again, I really only read this for the paleontology aspects, and that was one of my favorite parts about the book. So if that wasn't a part of the book, I don't think I would have liked it nearly as much. That being said, I probably wouldn't turn away a book just because it's historical fiction. So again, 4.75 stars. I would highly recommend it, especially if you like paleontology, but even if you don't, I still think you should read it. Faith from the future here, I completely forgot that I read another book this month, and that would be The Silent Patient, which I did have on my physical TBR, but if you watched my video a couple weeks ago where I did an unhaul of all my books, you might know I included that in the unhaul because I DNF'd it. I didn't like this book at all. It was so boring to me. I'd like to point out, I have pretty much only ever heard 2 opinions about this book. The first one being the entire book is so boring, and the second one being the entire book is so boring, but then the end is really good. So about 40% into this book, I was like, I am so bored. I need to actually know if the ending is worth it or not. So I put a poll on my Instagram asking if it was worth it to continue. If I remember correctly, the results were about 67% yes, it's worth it, finish it, and 33% no, it sucks, don't finish it. So even though the results were yes, I just couldn't do it. I got to about 53% and I couldn't do it anymore. It was so boring. I didn't like anything about the book at all, if I'm being honest. And also, in my opinion, a book that is only good the last 5 to 10% just isn't a good book. So even if I were to get to the end and like whatever happens at the end, it was mostly bad. So to me, that is a bad book. And like I've said in this video and a ton of my other videos, I'm trying to get my physical TBR down. I don't want to waste it on a book that I'm just not liking. So The Silent Patient, I DNF'd it, and I personally would not recommend it. And then we have Assistant to the Villain, and I gave this a 4.75 stars, and I have 2 words for you about this book, and that would be the yearning. Oh my god. If you need to read about a man who is so unbelievably down bad for a woman, read this book immediately. When I tell you, he is obsessed with her from page 1, and they aren't even together by the end of this book. The entire book is just him yearning for her because she doesn't know about his feelings for her, and he is too scared to tell her because he doesn't think he's good enough for her, and she doesn't even realize her feelings for him yet. This book, guys, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Low-key, I'm thinking, and I'm like, 4.75 stars is not enough. It is not enough. You know what? As I'm sitting here thinking about this man and his yearning, I loved this book so much. I'm thinking right now, why did I give it a 4.75 stars? Why did I do that, Faith? Because you know what? You know what this book deserves? It deserves 5 stars because it was so good. I loved this book so much. I finished this book, and if you've read it, you know, it ends on a cliffhanger. And I finished this at like midnight, and you know how mad I was when I finished that I couldn't immediately pick up book 2? That's right. And I was too scared to buy the rest of the series in September because I truly did not know if I would get my TBR below that 50 or not. So I still haven't bought or read book 2 or 3. Trust I will be doing so in October, if not November at the absolute latest. Because I need to keep reading about this man and his yearning. 5 stars from me, actually. And in case you couldn't tell, I highly recommend this book. So I finished that book and I'm like, you know what? This has been the best reading month I've had in a long time, despite Gulliver's Travels. So I was a little disappointed when I read this, The Cousins, and I only gave it 2 stars again. I tried so hard to like this book, guys, but it was just so boring. It also doesn't help that I really did not like a single one of the characters. To me, the most interesting thing that happened in this book was Jonah not actually being their cousin. That being said, authors, can we please stop with the whole, oh my god, that's my cousin and they're hot AF, only to later find out they're not cousins, but for that brief moment you're like, ew, incest. Because tell me why this is the 3rd book I've read this year that had something like that in it. Like, full stop, please. Cassandra Clare, I'm looking at you too, girl, and George R.R. Martin, I'm really looking at you for that one. I simply know of too many books that have that plotline when, truthfully, there should be 0 with it. And you might be like, Faith, well, they weren't actually cousins. I do not care. Because as far as we, the readers, know in that moment, he is finding his cousin sexy. So I don't really care that after the fact it ends up, oh, they're not actually related. In that moment, as far as you're aware, they are related. And that is icky. So again, The Cousins, 2 stars. Hey guys, Faith from the past coming in here. As usual, I wanted to keep things in order of how I read them. And I'm getting rid of this book, but I did want to show proof that I owned the physical copy, so it is still coming off of my physical DVR. But I did not like this book at all, so I am getting rid of it. And I'm getting rid of it today before I filmed the rest of this video, so that's why I'm filming this at a different time. So I gave this book 2.5 stars, and looking back, I'm lowering it to 2 because 2.5 was way too generous. I did not like this book at all. And guys, I tried so hard to like it, but I just couldn't. It is so boring. I think this is the most boring romance book I've ever read in my life. I also felt like it was trying way too hard to be deep and impactful, and it just completely missed the mark for me. I also didn't really like the characters. Aurora annoyed me a lot, and then Mike at the end pissed me off. Because what on earth was that reaction to what she told him? Oh my god, we met a decade ago for like 10 seconds and you didn't tell me this entire time? You didn't tell me? I hate you. Get out of my house. I'm blocking you. I'm cutting you off my insurance. Like, what? I'm aware that he was insecure about people wanting him just for hockey, but he read all of her diary entries and it's very clear that that isn't what that was about. But then that's what he said he was angry about. He's like, everyone just wants me for hockey. You read her diary entries. It's very clear that that is not why she wanted you. And shortly after that, he was like, I know I'm overreacting and everyone in my life is telling me that I'm overreacting, but I can't help how I feel. I get the second part of that. You can't help how you feel. But like, seriously? So I literally hated the ending so much, especially with the letters back and forth of being like how they resolved things. And then the epilogue just made no sense to me. It was out of character on both ends. And I literally just did a massive book on haul 2 weeks ago. So if I had only waited, I would have added this to it. So not only am I getting my physical TBR down, I'm also getting more room on my bookshelf. Again, 2 stars. I would not recommend this book to anybody. But moving on from that, then we have Anxious for Nothing, and I gave this 2.5 stars. First of all, if you are not Christian and you do not believe in God, I would not read this book. This entire book was super repetitive. It pretty much just said, oh, you find yourself in an anxious situation? Don't be anxious. Just trust in God. Now, I am not a mental health professional in any capacity, so this is just my personal opinion. In my personal opinion, if your anxiety is bad enough that you need to seek out help books for it, being told, don't be anxious, just trust in God, will do nothing to actually ease your anxiety. Again, this is just my personal opinion, and of course, people have different levels of anxiety, they experience it differently, but I feel like for most people with anxiety, this book will just do nothing for you. There were a couple parts I found insightful, which is why I gave it the 2.5. However, the majority of it is literally, why be anxious when you could just trust God? And while that might help some, again, I just feel like most people with anxiety, that will do literally nothing for them. Again, I gave it a 2.5. If you're not Christian, I definitely would not read it. If you are Christian, you could give it a try. It might help you, but it did not do a lot for me. And then we have Quicksilver, and I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. When I started this book, I had some things in my personal life happen that just completely took me away from reading, so I did struggle a bit getting into it, but that's not the book's fault at all. I think if that stuff didn't happen, I could have given it a higher rating, but just because of how long it took me to get into it, I did decide to give it 4.5. I really liked the world building. The plot was super engaging. There's a ton of plot twists as well, which I love. I will say, I did not expect Malcolm to be down bad for Kingfisher. That was probably the biggest plot twist for me. But also, I'm sorry, what kind of name is Kingfisher? I don't like that. And then they shortened it to just Fisher. I also didn't like that. So while I love Kingfisher and pretty much everything about his character, it's the name that I don't really like. But when I finished this book, I did decide to look it up. Why Kingfisher? And apparently some people say it's because it's based on some King in the Fisher, King Arthur thing. I don't know if that's right, but yeah, something like that. This was a very highly anticipated book with how popular it was in the book community. And I know there were people who didn't like it, but I actually really did. And I finished it just in time for Brimstone. And I am very excited for that one. And it does end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And I kind of anticipated that, which is why I saved it till just before Brimstone comes out. But yeah, very excited for that. I really liked the world building. I hope we get some more of it in book 2. Again, I'm giving it a 4.5 and I definitely would recommend it. Those are all the books that I read in September. And again, my goal was to get my physical TBR below 50 or else I have to do all of those punishments. And guys, I got it to 48. I think I did the initial count in April and it was 66, and I'm so happy that I'm finally below the 50 mark. I'm going to try my best to keep it below 50. However, no promises because I do have 3 or 4 pre-orders coming in this month, but I'm also 100% going to read all 3 of those books this month. So yeah, my goal for October will probably be get it below 45 because my goal for the end of fall is to have it below 40. I'm probably going to post on my Instagram story again asking for more punishments if I don't get it below those numbers. So if you want to participate in that, my Instagram is linked in the description. And next week I'm doing a massive indie book shout out. Right now I'm planning to do 10 books from at least 6 genres, and those genres would be romance, fantasy, romantasy, horror, thriller, mystery, and sci-fi. So if you want some indie book recs, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. And if you do watch my videos, you probably know that was actually supposed to come out like 3 weeks ago, but life got in the way and I wasn't able to squeeze that in that week. But I promise this time it is coming next week. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you all had amazing reading months in September. If not, I hope your October reading month is better. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Instagram, which is linked in the description for more bookish content. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Love you guys. Bye.